All right, so hi everybody. Let's have everyone say hello at the same time. Say hi, hello. 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 Most of the people are on that side behind me, but as the room fills up, we may actually have some heads here, so we have to make sure that we're not in your guys' way. So did you start it? Yeah. It's going? Awesome. Okay. So hi everybody. It's such a pleasure to have you here today. There's gonna, for everyone in the room, there's going to be one more SkypeOnArt after this. A week after next, it's going to be, we're going to be actually looking at some kinetic interactive artwork. So please come back. But right now, I have Elizabeth Thompson and, what was your name again?
Megan Ahern.
Who are going to be talking.
Megan Ahern, who runs the Buckminster Fuller Challenge program.
Fabulous. And I might have you guys introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about the program. And I'm going to turn off the overhead lights. So there may be a few more heads coming in front of you, but I'll make a move if they get in your way.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We are really happy to be joining you in this particular way. I love this setup from our end. This just looks like a very, very cool environment. I'm Elizabeth Thompson, and I've been serving as the executive director at the Fuller Institute for the last decade or so. And joining me is Megan Ahern, who runs the Buckminster Fuller Challenge program. So for those of you who don't know, BFI is just right across the river. We're located in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and we serve a sort of global network of people inspired by Fuller, and the focus of our work is really on the contemporary applications of the fundamental design principles that informed Buckminster Fuller in his work. So I can't see any of you, so I'm just going to sort of, maybe you could shout out, how many of you know who Bucky Fuller is or was? Have some background of information?
You guys?
Okay.
We know we have a couple. We have a few in the back.
Okay. So anybody attended one of his lectures of those few in the back?
No.
Or been inside a geodesic dome? Familiar with his sort of most iconic structures? Okay. All right. So I'm just going to very quickly run through sort of who Buckminster Fuller was and why his legacy continues to be relevant today. And we would argue it couldn't be more relevant than today. So very quickly, he was born over a century ago in 1895 in Milton, Massachusetts. One highlight or kind of important aspect of his childhood is that he had very severely compromised eyesight. It was so bad that he had to depend primarily on his other senses as a child rather than his vision to understand the world. He didn't get glasses to correct his vision until he was 4 years old. So just keep that in mind, that fundamental emphasis on the felt experience of the world was what drove him throughout his life and underpinned many of his ideas.
Presentation is not shown on the screen.
Oh, it's not. Well, so you guys,
yeah.
I'm going to minimize you.
Okay.
I'm going to minimize you.
So I'm going to go, maybe you can just show the picture of Bucky and his glasses, or without glasses actually, and then with glasses, just. The second slide.
Okay, so you're going to be floating.
I just kept talking.
That's great. Well, no, I thought it was a wonderful intro. Okay, so you guys are going to just continue to talk, and I'm just going to scroll through.
All right.
So here.
Do you want me to call out next slide?
Yeah, I'm your slide.
Okay.
I'm your slide carousel.
All right. So next slide. Okay. So here he is at Harvard. Just a little bit of background. He was expelled twice. First for spending all of his money with vaudeville showgirls, and then after being readmitted, He was expelled again for his irresponsibility and general lack of interest in formalized education. You will see in a couple seconds that that did not slow him down. Okay, shortly after getting out of college, he married his wife Anne. He joined the U.S. Navy during World War I and was one of the first radio operators where he witnessed firsthand the impact of new technology on human abilities and the ability to communicate wirelessly. Sorry, next couple slides. Now he's in a, oh, okay, stop. So just very quickly, the ability to communicate wirelessly led him to this epiphanic kind of insight of how technology was impacting humanity in very paradoxical ways. On the one hand, it was dramatically increasing efficiencies and allowing us to do more with less, but on the other hand, it was leading to further and further specialization and limiting our ability to see the big picture. So the story of his transformation really, his transformation into a visionary futurist really began at the age of 32. Here he is on the shore of Lake Michigan. When he was 32 years old, his first daughter, Alexandra, who had suffered from influenza and pneumonia, died of spinal meningitis. And from Bucky's perspective, her death was preventable, he believed, if housing were more sanitary and if we could design better systems to control our environments. So as the story goes, on a particularly bad evening, 1927, he goes to the shore of Lake Michigan and was set on doing himself in. Whether or not this actually happened is unclear according to the scholars, but what is very apparent is that he had an experience of such intensity and power that it propelled him forward for the rest of his life. He really describes it as a kind of mystical experience. So from that point on, he decided to devote his life to being an experiment, to find out what one individual could do on behalf of all humanity. Next slide. This was the beginning of a 56-year experiment. This is the cover of Time magazine in 1964. He described himself as guinea pig B for Bucky, in which he challenged everything that he was taught and what he had thought. The story goes that he didn't speak for 2 years in an effort to unlearn everything that he had been taught and to clarify with sort of idiosyncratic precision his own thinking. He committed his life to identifying the design principles operating in the universe and to apply those principles to the design of new living systems. And in the process, he became world famous. This is the U.S. postage stamp, commemorative stamp issued in 2004 on the 50th anniversary of the patenting of the geodesic dome. His career ended up spanning a sort of a staggering range of fields, from architecture to visual arts, poetry, mathematics, engineering, cartography, urban planning. He was a self-described comprehensivist and sort of intuitively refused to treat these diverse areas of inquiry as distinct disciplines. Next slide. He was dubbed by his good friend Marshall McLuhan as the Leonardo da Vinci of the 20th century. Next slide. And over the course of his experiment, he wrote 23 books, really making one continuous argument for the options that humanity has to harness our intellect, know-how, and technology to create a higher standard of living for everybody. His was you can see from the titles of his books, his was a deeply ethical vision. Next slide. He was granted 28 patents for automobiles, boats, various forms of shelter, advanced structural systems, bathrooms, wave machines, fog guns, a hanging bookshelf, and of course the geodesic dome.
I didn't know he did a hanging bookshelf. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
He had to put his books somewhere, right?
I guess you're right.
Publishing, he didn't have any place to put them. So, and he was, despite his famous sort of career at Harvard, he was awarded 47 honorary doctorates from universities all over the world. Next slide. It's estimated that his was the most documented life in history. I think he still has the record of noted American in terms of the size of his archive. He kept a detailed log of every aspect of his life, which is called the Chronophile. It's now at Stanford University in their Special Collections Library. Next slide. He was among one of the first real global thinkers, and as early as 1927, he really understood the interdependence amongst Earth's inhabitants, which he described, and he described the planet as one town world, sorry. Next slide. And he meticulously collected data about global trends for decades. This was one of the kind of foundations of his practice as a creative agent, was to do data collection and analysis. He was detecting the beginning of the rapid acceleration of many phenomenon. You'll see in some of how he describes comprehensive anticipatory design science, really anticipating what's coming down the pike from a technological as well as a human trends and needs perspective, was fundamental to his practice. Next slide. He realized that the emergent properties of these interconnected systems can't be predicted by studying them alone. So the process of designing to understand and optimize synergies became central to his approach. He called starting with the whole systems the process of synergetic advantage. Next slide. And by discerning these principles operating in the universe, he felt and used his own life as an example that civilization could be designed from a whole systems perspective to do more with less. Every single one of his artifacts was a demonstration of this principle. The geodesic dome in particular, it covers more volume with less material than any other structure. And because of its structural integrity, the dome actually gets stronger as it gets larger, and there's really no limit to its size. Next slide. He continuously and consistently emphasized the importance of recognizing that humanity has this special capacity to consciously discern and apply these principles that can be found in the fundamental structure of the universe. And he referred to this ability to conceptualize and understand these principles as our metaphysical capabilities. And he insisted that this is a resource that is absolutely unlimited in terms of the tools we have to design a world that works for everybody. Next slide. This is Bucky at Black Mountain College, where he famously was part of the faculty in 48 and 49. And the community there of artists and other visionary thinkers had a profound impact on Bucky's own life and ideas. He addressed these techniques of cultivating our metaphysical capacities through what he called the geometry of thinking, and developed a number of educational programs based on this. Next slide. Let's see. You can sort of divine from the titles of these books that he stressed the urgency of education and media technologies as fundamentally key to our capacity to design a world that works for everybody. And he stressed this the urgency of this in no uncertain terms. Certainly the title of his last book, pictured here, Utopia or Oblivion, was precisely the context in which we find ourselves today and that he anticipated over 50 years ago. Next slide. So he insisted that politics was not going to work, and he proposed his comprehensive design science as an alternative to politics. He called for a design science decade, and at the Southern Illinois University with his students there, he laid out a 10-year proposal to retool and redesign civilization based on successful evolutionary design principles operating in nature, and he felt that this could be done by 1985.
I'm assigning this to all of you in my class, okay? All of you can be doing this, all right? Just pay attention.
Let's we can skip the next slide. Let's see, the next slide is a blue cover of the book. Let's go to the World Game slide, World Game Report slide.
Okay.
So all of this research and sort of thinking and his really defining this kind of approach to problem solving culminated in his early types for what was called the World Game. And this project, which he launched in 1968 at the Studio School here in Manhattan with Edwin Schlossberg as his kind of co-facilitator. He proposed that computer simulations and immersive education technologies would be absolutely fundamental to help many people around the world participate in designing a world that works for everyone. You know, this is a really early effort at sort of anticipating these, the gaming industry, basically. And the World Game was really based on the fundamental principles of cooperation, sharing, and peace. Next slide. And he proposed the World Game. Have you got the, yeah, great. He proposed the World Game for the U.S. Pavilion at Expo 1967 in Montreal at the World's Fair. The U.S. government rejected that sort of base concept, but they did engage him to design the sphere, which represented the United States for the Expo, and it's one of the world's most iconic structures. We are actually in the process of trying to work with the Heritage Montreal folks in Montreal to get this dome cited as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The 50th anniversary of Expo 67, of course, is next year, and we're looking forward to a series of celebrations that the City of Montreal is preparing for. So, next slide. So, just to say, Fuller passed in 1983. Next slide, but Buckminster Fuller is still a dangerous man. This is a conversation that I had with Bruce Mao a couple of months ago. His ideas could not be more relevant and still have a level of kind of radicalism that the world has yet to catch up with. So, the definition of radical is of the root. Bucky Fuller was a radical utopian. Utopian, it really means the capacity to envision, and he really had, and still has, his ideas still provide this singular capacity to envision root change. So, next slide. So, at the Fuller Institute, we are sort of making sure that these ideas stay at the forefront of the kind of global discussion about our collective future. And we continue to encourage more people to reflect on what it means to devote your creative energy towards designing a world that works for everybody. So in '61, Bucky challenged the world's architecture students to make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone. It still stands as one of the most sort of succinct definitions of a goal for a sustainable, or as Bucky would call it, a sort of regenerative future. So let's see, next slide. So what does this mean? Making the world work. How does the world work at present? What does it mean for the world to work? Who's included and who's not? Next slide. For 100% of humanity, how is this qualified? How is it quantified? How do we do this in relationship to the Earth's natural resource systems? Next slide. In the shortest possible time, what strategies and resources are required and available? What does this pragmatically look like? How do we accomplish this? Through spontaneous cooperation. Fuller answered himself in this next sentence. How do we catalyze a kind of cooperation amongst people around the world to employ their agency on behalf of this particular goal of making the world work? Next slide. Without ecological offense, we need to consider the ecological context of all of our design decisions. And lastly, without the disadvantage of anyone. You know, how can interconnected cultural, social, ecological, technological, and economic systems be optimized for overall well-being? Next slide. So it's the challenge and potential of this intention emerges when these elements are considered as a whole, and that's what we're doing at the Institute. In 2007, we launched the Buckminster Fuller Challenge, which has been, it's an annual design competition in which we award a $100,000 prize to a project that best exemplifies the sort of integration of these 7 key criteria. And the challenge has now been recognized as Socially Responsible Design's highest award, which we're very proud of. I'm going to hand it over to Megan for a second, and then we'll watch a quick film that gives you a sense of the kinds of projects that are celebrated in the challenge.
Sure. So I'm Megan Ahern, I'm the program manager for the Fuller Challenge, and I'm just going to share with you a little bit of information about our program and the process that we take on each year, and you know, our outreach and the applicants that we generally encounter.
Which
so we're still counting entries from. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I think maybe I backed into the HDMI cord. Okay, go on.
Okay. We're still counting entries from this year's challenge, and we're beginning our review process, which is a 5-month process that involves a full team with very diverse and varied backgrounds together and sort of add their perspective to the process. We also have a team of advisors, which you can see on our website. The reason we have so many different individuals involved in the review team and so many different advisors is because our entries really come from all disciplines. When we do surveys each year and we try to sort of categorize the entries in batches, we have projects representing art, communication, economic development, poverty alleviation, community planning, education, energy, technology, environmental and ecological interventions, finance, food and agriculture, health, water and sanitation, materials, transportation, and shelter and architecture. So really, it's across the board, you know, every discipline you can think of, there is a challenge entry that represents that field. And our applicants themselves, they identify as well under all sorts of categories. Many of them identify as entrepreneurs, but they're also educators, inventors, activists, scientists, architects, artists, engineers, planners, designers, and students as well, and even farmers. And this year it's the first year that we have a dedicated review track for student entries. So student entries won't be competing with a general pool. They'll have the opportunity to have their work publicly recognized as the winner of the student category for the Fuller Challenge. So if you're interested.
I was just about to say, which is one of the reasons that SkypeOnArt is doing the BFI award right now. So yeah. Go on. I just interrupted you right at the part where you're starting to talk about applicability to students. Go for it.
Sure. I was just going to say our deadline has passed, but if you're interested, you can get in touch with me. challenge@bfi.org is my email address, and you can let me know that you're interested, and I'll provide information about, you know, next year's cycle and our criteria and how the selection process works. I also wanted to note that last year we had over 400 entries, and they came from all over the world. So over 136 countries were represented in the challenge entries, and all of those present a huge load of work for our review team. As I mentioned, it's a 5-month process, so we have our first announcements coming out about the semifinalists in mid-summer, usually in July, and from there we proceed to announce the finalists and subsequently the winner. We also have opportunities for entries that don't necessarily fit as a contender. They may not necessarily make it to the finalist round, but there is something there that we see as strong within our criteria and that deserves some other form of support. And so we invite those entries to join our Catalyst program, through which we offer a number of other benefits, including exposure that could lead to eventual other funding opportunities. So we're trying to expand the program so that we can accommodate more types of entries that may not necessarily be a fit as the winner, but there may be something there that we can provide to them through our organizational partnerships. And I think that's it. If we want to proceed to the video, if Elizabeth wants to add anything.
Yeah, no, I think if you want to play the video, that'll give you a sense of the program and some of the entries that we highlight. And if anybody is interested in, reading more deeply about Fuller, there are 2 books that have just come out in the last 2 weeks. One by Jonathan Keats called You Belong to the Universe, and the second by Mark Wigley, who's a professor at Columbia, called Bucky Inc., Buckminster Fuller in the Age of Radio. Both are fantastic reads on Fuller's impact and relevance today, so I highly recommend
Can we hear that one again?
Yeah, can we hear both of them again?
Elizabeth, could you do both of those titles again?
Sure. The first is by Jonathan Keats, Keats. It's called You Belong to the Universe, published by Oxford. The second is by Mark Wigley, Wigley, I believe, and it's called Bucky Inc., Buckminster Fuller in the Age of Radio. Both are very different, but fantastic introductions to Fuller and his relevance today.
Yeah.
For those that are interested in resources like those, and in general announcements about our work and the challenge, in our monthly newsletter we include a section with books about Fuller, or essays or articles that have been published about Fuller recently, and we also include all program announcements there. So if you go to our website and sign up for our newsletter, you'll be able to receive lots of information from us.
I have a general question for you guys. It just seems like, I just did some crits with the MFA students over at Hunter, and a couple of them mentioned Bucky as an influence. And I'm just beginning, there's that book just came out about Black Mountain College, him and Albers and Cage, about sort of their kind of, the kinds of ways that the 3 of them kind of engaged in different sorts of experiments. And I'm just kind of wondering, are we going through a sort of like a renaissance right now with Bucky and his work?
I think that we are. I think that there's a huge amount of interest in sort of historical precedents for engaging with the complexities that we are presently. I think that there's a real interest in new ways of thinking about problem solving, and that coupled with the fact that the archives at Stanford have now been accessible to scholars in a very, in a much more accessible way, particularly in the last 5 years. So you're starting to see the second and third wave of scholarship on Fuller, which is crucially important to the long-term impact of his ideas.
Fabulous, wonderful. Okay, so thanks for the update on that. But I'm going to go to the Fuller Challenge video right now, and then we can have questions at the end. So we'll see how loud this is.
It's actually an interesting format. You can see.
I can hear you guys over the video though.
Okay. Sorry.
We have created a process by which we are challenging people to think more deeply or differently about how they're doing what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing. We put out a call for proposals. proposals. It goes out all over the world. We bring on an increasing number of experts, advisors, comprehensive generalists who help us review the projects, and we winnow it down to a group of semi-finalists, then finalists, and then a winner is selected. Algae Systems, a closed-loop wastewater treatment system, integrating the cultivation of native algae species with innovative technologies, yielding clean water, carbon-negative biofuels, and fertilizers, while sequestering carbon as part of the paradigm shift toward carbon-neutral infrastructure. Community Architects Network, working to build equitable processes of participatory design, planning, and development throughout 19 countries across Asia, approaching comprehensive change through the built environment, legitimizing local knowledge and empowering local communities to be the solution. Hazel from the Drylands Resilience Initiative, a powerful digital modeling tool for data-based evaluation of hydrologic design interventions, using whole systems thinking to understand the coupling of human and natural systems, optimizing coordinated decision-making for water-smart urban design. The Climate Change Resiliency Project from the Gila Housing Siwa Trust, devising multi-layered solutions for urban dwellers facing climate change impacts, building on decades of work in sustainable community development and women's empowerment, strengthening capacities for climate change resilience across 4 states of India. The Nubian Vault Program, addressing the critical need for housing across the arid Sahel region of Africa, reintroducing an ancient construction technique to provide sustainable shelter, shaping a market for local entrepreneurs in Burkina Faso, Senegal, Mali, Benin, and Ghana. And the winner of the 2015 Fuller Challenge, Green Wave, a nonprofit organization founded to transform fishers into restorative ocean farmers. Green Wave's 3D ocean farms support biodiversity, filter ocean water, absorb greenhouse gases, and create jobs in coastal communities. The low-cost, simple infrastructure can allow farmers to produce food, fertilizers, animal feeds, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, biofuels, and more. The people that we are celebrating in the Buckminster Fuller Challenge are incredible examples of that sense of urgency that their actions as individuals can make a difference, and their persistence will lead to change over time.
Hey, nice video, you guys. I love the fact it was really great when the video started. I heard you go, wow, this is a really interesting model, and it was great because your voice was a little louder than the rest of the video. So fast. Do you guys have anything else? Oh, it's starting again. Hold on one sec. There we go. So fast question, you guys. Do you have more that you would like to say now, or should we go to questions? No questions? Okay.
Let's go to questions.
Okay. I think that's really good. But I just want to clarify for everybody in this room, the first BFI Challenge Award just for students happened this year, and actually the close on it was Friday at midnight. Is that right? Yeah. I think it closed last Friday at midnight. But I just want you guys to keep this in mind because you guys are really gonna be the next generation of creators. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind, that this award comes around each year, and you might want to think about what you're currently working on. So hey Jade, come on over here. You can sit here. We've got a couple questions, so I'm gonna have them come sit in front and so that they can ask you.
I just wanted to share that I've been in discussion with some artists recently who are kind of grappling with what we're doing with the challenge and their practice. And they're starting to use this sort of term for themselves of the embedded artist as a way in which to sort of understand how their practice as an artist and a direct engagement with solving some of the big issues we're facing today makes sense. So.
Okay, so my question is for Megan. How did you become a part of this challenge, and what inspired you about this challenge?
That's a great question. So every year we have a fellowship program that we run, and we take on a couple of fellows. Typically it's just 2, who are recent graduates or current students that are applying to be part of the Fuller Challenge review process. So we have a team of members that joins us every year for the review process, and they have sort of built up their experience with the challenge over time, and the fellowship is the entry point into the review team. And so in 2014, I was a fellow after finishing my master's degree, and I came to New York, and I was so inspired by the whole process, just the level of dialogue and the way of thinking about problem solving that I encountered through the review team was really, it was really fulfilling experience. It was really uplifting in terms of the problems we face in the world today and the number of initiatives that are working on these problems all over the world. And so after having been a fellow, then I began working part-time for BFI, and then I eventually replaced our last program manager when she left to do her master's. And we do have that fellowship program every year. We've already selected our fellows for this year, but again, if you're interested, there's more information on our website about the program and about the fellowship.
Thank you.
Amanda, did you want to say something? You think you might have to come this way so you don't have to step over the cord, though.
I left my question up there next to
Oh, you did? Excellent.
What I think is funny is that Mary Mattingly is part of the BFI.
Hi.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
My name's Amanda. I just got off of an airplane and my ears popped, so I can't really tell if I'm talking low or loud. But so I think this is all very inspiring, and I'm wondering, how do you even go about finding the best projects to pick? Because there's just probably so many that are so amazing. So I'm just wondering.
So that's a really great question. Actually, I didn't cover this when I was giving you guys the overview, but we have 7 very unique criteria in terms of the criteria that you encounter in the world of design competitions. And those criteria are based on Fuller's principles and definitions of comprehensive anticipatory design science. The criteria are visionary, comprehensive, anticipatory, feasible, verifiable, ecologically responsible, and replicable. And those criteria are also on our website. And so we use those to guide our evaluation of every project that comes through. As I mentioned, there's hundreds of entries every year, and generally we're able to sort of cull down within the first month or two to 150 very serious projects that are really, they've presented enough in their application and their answers to the questions to demonstrate how they fulfill each of those criteria. And then from there on, we bring the rest of the review team on, and it involves a lot of discussion. It involves sometimes 3-hour sessions. We have weekly meetings where we'll discuss, 15 projects at a time, and it takes a lot of staff time, a lot of reading, a lot of outside research, consulting with expert advisors to sort of narrow down when you're comparing apples to oranges in some cases, because entries come from every discipline. But we always try to return back to those criteria in our analysis. Is that helpful?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Andrea. I was wondering, I was a little confused by what he meant when he said politics wasn't going to work. What did he actually mean by that? Because it ain't working, so.
You can tell us.
I think he really felt that our political institutions were not effective or efficient in making the kinds of decisions that needed to be made to ensure that the world was moving in a positive direction. And I think that obviously has been borne out to be true. He really thought very early on in his career that what was needed was a design revolution, and that if we could rethink how to look at housing and transportation and education and access to renewable energy, and design systems for humans to live in, with the understanding that there are enough resources to go around, even in a context of increasing human populations. It's just a design issue to understand how to apply them more efficiently. And if you can eliminate so many of the reasons why we have conflict in the world through design agency, that's his point, was that's the way to go. Forget trying to elect someone who's going to make that happen for you.
That's good. Thank you.
He really was so adamant about the capacity of individuals to understand their profound capabilities and agency to create the world that we all want to see happen, and to not sort of hand that agency over to someone else, or a political party, or anything else. That we have the powers in our own hands. It was a very radical message then, and it remains so.
We're figuring out questions. Who wants to ask questions? We have 6 more minutes. So.
Great.
My name is Mark. Yes, this is all very, very inspirational. I was curious about, in the video I saw, just like they listed off the winners, I was curious about I think it was the 2013 winner, something to do with, like, it was like the controversial, or whatever, the mushroom biodegradable, I guess, styrofoam replacement. That just sounded really interesting. I was wondering, like, what happens to programs after they win like that? Is that program still being funded, or are they're still researching that, or just what's the process afterwards, I guess?
So we get entries that are in a wide range of stage of development when they enter the challenge, and certainly when they win the challenge. So specifically with the mushroom packaging project, that was an early stage for-profit company when they originally entered the challenge, then they re-entered 3 years later. So that company has received funding from venture capitalists. They're expanding dramatically. They're now working with IKEA to re-envision their packaging, and you can only imagine the footprint that IKEA has.
Seriously.
So the project actually began in an engineering class at RPI in Rensselaer, in Troy, New York, Rensselaer Polytech Institute, and a professor in the engineering department put forth a challenge to his own students to come up with a viable strategy to address an environmental issue in the form of a business venture. So 2 students teamed up to come up with the kind of early idea for Ecovative, and they just proceeded from there. It was their story about how the project started and what they're doing now is very inspiring in and of itself, let alone what they've designed and developed.
That's awesome.
They're hiring.
Are they really? That's awesome.
I was talking to someone just last week, and understanding that the partnership with IKEA is so massive that they're having to boot up their operations in Troy fast and furiously. So it's ecovative.com.
Okay.
And we would be happy to make any introductions
Awesome.
for any of you who would like to
Can
do
they
that.
spell that website?
The 2 guys who started the company could not be more incredible, inspiring, humane people.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So you guys, any more questions? Any more? No, okay. So this is just absolutely perfect timing. I gotta tell you, I love the idea of them actually growing IKEA furniture out of the mushrooms. Not just the packaging, but the furniture. Like that would be so. I just love the idea of like getting your own mold and then putting your mushrooms in it and then just waiting for them to grow. It's really awesome.
They are developing surfboards, skateboards.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's just beautiful.
Replacement for sheetrock. So.
Oh, I love it. Well, the other thing too is I've got a big, I love the idea of maybe having sculpture students starting to use those materials to make stuff, right? You just build the outside and grow the inside. It's a wonderful idea. Well, listen, you guys, it's been such a pleasure having you at Rutgers. And it was such a pleasure getting the slides, and that was such a great talk. Thank you so much. It was just wonderful. Let's have a big hand. Yay! And so listen, we have this on video. So I'm going to upload it onto the Rutgers website, and I'll send you guys a link. And if you need to use it for the purposes of students, if you want it for the purposes of a student award, or if there's any pieces of it that you want to use, you're absolutely welcome to do that. Are you comfortable having me do that?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Okay. It's a plan.
Sure.
And thank you so.
And please, just encourage all of you to consider becoming a fellow. And maybe we can talk about when we whittled down the student entry pool to a handful. Lisa, maybe we can talk about how to engage you and your students in that process.
I think that would be wonderful. I think we could figure out a really great model for that. So I think that's just great. Well, listen, thank you so much, you guys. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Yay! All right, you guys. I hope you're all inspired to go change the world. All right? Yeah. All right. I mean.